Hello, guys. Welcome back to the new episode with What a Comedian, Natalie. Whoa. Life has been good so far. I actually went to Cincinnati for this past week and basically picked up balls, rolled them, and threw them to players, which was cool though. My legs are literally so sore. I did not realize that it was so tiring, but it was really fun, and I got to meet a bunch of famous tennis players. Um, I could see the top tennis players play live, like Carlos Alcaraz, Yannick Sinner. It was really insane. I almost got a few of those autographs, but then I got yelled at because I'm technically not allowed to get autographs or photos with any of them, but I did anyways. Sorry, Jan. But Mark is cool though. Mark allowed me to take photos even though he said I'm technically not allowed to. But that's okay. I made a lot of new friends. I made a lot of unexpected friends too, from a few friends from different cities and states. There was people from Indiana, Illinois, Kentucky, freaking San Diego, which is not a state, but whatever. But it's just like it was really insane to meet all these people just to do the same job. And I really hope I can do it again because I don't know, it was just so fun and the people there are great. And even though my friend that I went with in the beginning did not really like it as much as I did, I think if I could go next year, I would do it again, even if I didn't have any friends there because I don't know, I feel like like day by day I've become even more able to socialize with other people, and I think I would just be fine being alone because it's not like I'm not against being alone, you know? Anyways, so life has been good. Did not work on any college apps though. Also my recent episode with Andy Bolduck actually did pretty well. It's done the best out of all my episodes so far, so I'm really happy about that. But I am trying to see what I can do to improve on just episodes, and I think I'm definitely getting better at interviews. Even though I probably take more time to research about each comedian, I definitely try my best to scour the internet and think of as many interview questions as I can. But I really need to stop saying during questions because it's really stupid sounding, and I need to talk softer because I often blast open the mic. Not that I have a good microphone, but if I earn any money from this, or if I somehow get enough money to waste money on a microphone, maybe I'll do that. But we'll see. Anyways, to today's episode. Today I am talking with Alan Giles. He is currently residing in LA. Super cool, super chill. We had a really good conversation. I actually really enjoyed talking with him. And he's one of the people where I feel like he's so humble about his abilities in comedy. Like, even though this was never brought up in the conversation, I saw that he was like the national winner for some improv during college. And I'm just like, that's actually insane, and it never got brought up, so that's my bad. But he's been to Chicago, he's been in LA, so if you can see him in real life, check him out. He's a super cool guy, and yeah. How are you so far? Just how are you today?
Yeah, I'm pretty good. Just been working. I live in LA and have like a little like work from home job to pay the bills. So yeah, just been doing that so far.
Yeah. So is comedy just kind of your like side gig, you would say?
Yeah, at the moment I feel like it's like the, side like passion project, I guess. It's like having a day job to pay the bills and then comedy is sort of like what I get to do when I'm not working and thankfully, I have a job situation where it makes me be at home where I can like audition for things all the time and like, at least my nights free to do shows and whatnot. So yeah, that's pretty much my setup right now.
Oh, that's pretty good, honestly. When did you like think of like wanting to be a comedian or like do this on a side job, you would say?
Yeah, yeah, totally. I mean, I think that like honestly probably high school. Like I think that I was in an improv class in my hometown, which is Columbus, Georgia, and I was just like uh, really hooked because it was so funny, and I had really great teachers who now I feel lucky to be able to say are like friends of mine. And Yeah, I mean, I was in like a bit of a, like was in a theater camp, I guess, and we had all different kinds of classes like musical theater and scene study, but like improv was my favorite class by far. And so when it came to like finishing high school and deciding like what I wanted to do and where I wanted to go, I had a mentor of mine who had moved to Chicago, and he said, you know, hey, if you like improv, if you like comedy, Chicago's the place to be. So I kind of just went sight unseen.
Yeah.
I applied to Columbia College Chicago, got in, and my first day in Chicago was when I moved into the dorms. I'd never even like
Wow.
checked it out before.
Just straight up just like
But
went in there and just like did not look back.
Exactly. Yeah, I was just like, you know what? I just trust that Chicago is a place for me, and it totally was. I lived there 7 years, and it was the best. But yeah, that was sort of I feel like where it all started for me was like high school improv, and then that got me into just like the Chicago improv and sketch pipeline.
Yeah. What would you say is like the most important thing to improv? Do you think is like do you need like a certain set like of like things of comebacks in your mind, or is it just like really experience and just like getting like practicing it over and over?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, I think that improv is like mostly listening and responding to what you're hearing. I think that's like the number one thing is like learning how to be in a state of really just like having an awareness of what your partner's giving you, what everyone on stage is doing, and being able to respond to just that rather than, you know, being stuck in your head and being worried about being funny or like trying to pull some like you know obscure reference and you know those things can work sometimes, but like ultimately I think it's all about just like being present and really like listening and responding to the last thing that happened. And I think also it's just about having fun and like have like truly playing and being in that like kind of like almost childish like play space mindset. um I think that was where I have it. That was where I had a big breakthrough with improv, like back in college, because there was a little bit of time where I got really in my head and I was pretty worried about always being smart, always being funny, and then I reached a point where I realized that oh, this is just supposed to be fun, and so I just started, you know, deciding to like only do the parts of it that sounded fun to me. That was when I feel like I started actually being good at improv.
Yeah, it needs to be like funny to yourself first before it can be funny to others, right?
Yeah, 100%, always.
How important would you say like the audience is in improv? Because I feel like if the audience isn't responsive, it's kind of hard to make things up.
Yeah, that's so true. I mean, I think that like obviously the audience provides the suggestion, you know, at the top, which is like so crucial to like being able to create something out of nothing is like we need that one thing to get us started, and to also prove that it's all made up, that we're not just like doing something that we all wrote ahead of time.
Yeah.
So I think the audience provides that, and then also, I mean, I feel this way with improv, and I think it's true with stand up and doing like characters, like any type of comedy. I feel like it really is like a conversation that you're having with the audience. You know, when the audience laughs, that's them telling you like what you just said or what you just did resonated with me. Like that is funny to me for some reason, and it's a message back to the improvisers or the stand up or the performer, whoever's on stage, that like, oh, they like that. Cool. I'm gonna keep exploring that, and I'm gonna see where else that takes me. And so I think when you're doing improv, especially, there's a way that you can kind of be attuned to like, oh, I did this like little movement and the audience laughed. I'm gonna do this movement more. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
try to be like, oh, now I'm gonna just try to like really hone in on what they're loving, and you get to really explore and be like playful in that way.
So like it's
So
like
yeah,
kind
I
of
think the
like catching
audiences
on to
like
like their drift in a way.
exactly, yeah, yeah, seeing like what's working and what's not, and then when you find something that works, go after it. You know.
Would you say that most of your sets are improv or planned?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a fair mix right now. I do a lot of improv with friends and with other groups, but I also do a fair amount of sketch, which is all pre-written. And there's like group sketch, and there's also like solo sketch. So I'll do like solo characters, which is like all pre-written stuff. I mean, I've tried in the past to improvise my way through solo characters, and I found that I'm not very good at it. I'm a bit too much of a writer, I think, where I need to know where I'm going, and I need to like kind of have at least some touchstone jokes beat it out ahead of time. Because if you go up with nothing and you just try to figure it out by yourself, it can kind of feel like skydiving without a parachute. And
Yeah.
so I think that's where I'm at. Is like when I'm with other people, I lean in more into the improv, but when I'm by myself on stage, that's where I like to make sure that I have a bit of a plan.
Okay. Would you say that you would enjoy solo work more or like group work?
Um, oh yeah, that's a really tough question. They're because they're so different. Um, they're both so satisfying, but in very different ways. I mean, the amazing thing about group work and especially group improv is when there's these kind of like magical moments that happen where everybody is synced up and everybody has something that happened, that wasn't planned, and we all found it in the same time at the same time in the same place, and that feels like magic. And it feels like magic to the audience, and it feels like magic to the improvisers too. So that stuff is really satisfying. uh, but also, when I get to go on stage by myself and come up with an idea that was funny to me, and I wrote it out in my bedroom, and then when the audience gives me that validation of like, oh, we think this is funny too, that's also a super electric feeling. So yeah, it's just a different feeling. But I do think there's maybe the magic of the group work is a bit more special to me. You know what I mean? Like I,
Yeah.
I think that like the solo stuff is always cool. It's a good feeling. Like, oh cool, I wrote something funny. But when I do something with a group and we're all in sync, that feels like wow, this was special that I got to be here right now.
Yeah,
You know?
you gotta witness this like this moment.
Yeah, exactly.
Great. Do you think when you write these jokes, how often do you input these new things into your sets?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like honestly, I think that something that being attuned to improv has done for me is it's given me a bit of creative ADHD. And what I mean by that is that like when you're doing so much improv, everything is new. Every single time you go up, it's brand new. And so even when I'm doing written stuff solo, I find the urge to always be doing something new. Like it always feels weird to me if I go up and I do the exact same set that I did a week ago or 2 weeks ago, or like, and I admire, I think stand-ups are especially really good at owning the material and really, letting it mature over a long period of time. But yeah, at least right now where I am, I'm always trying to do something new, like every time I go on stage, like at least tweak one line or tweak one new joke, one new character. Like I just always want to be feeling like something new I can learn something new from the set.
Yeah. Does it often get tiring after like trying to do the sets over and over again, would you say?
Um, I don't know. I mean, I feel like it gets tiring when it doesn't feel authentic. Like if it's a character that I feel like I'm trying to like force to work and it's just not working,
Yeah.
then that's when I start to get tired. But if it's a character or a joke or a bit that I truly love and that it's coming from a really authentic place of like you said earlier, I think it's funny first. That's when it doesn't become tiring. It becomes really thrilling and exhilarating to like work on it and tweak it until it reaches the place of, feeling like, oh, it's evolved into the final state or whatever.
Yeah. When you think of these ideas, do you have like the fear of getting canceled?
Um, I not I want to say no because honestly, I feel like I know where my like moral ethical compass is,
Yeah.
and just being of our generation, being someone who's like online and talking to other people, and people, I be surrounding myself with people who have similar values to me. I feel like I know myself and I know my sense of humor, and I trust myself to not cross the line into territory that could be considered like offensive, or territory of like material that could be, yeah, just something that makes people uncomfortable. I mean, I think that's sort of my whole thing is when I'm on stage, I want people to feel like they can trust me, and I want people to feel like I'm taking care of them, that I'm like a professional, and that they don't need to be sitting on the edge of their seat like, oh, is he going to do something, that crosses the line? Like I feel like there are some comics that lean into that like discomfort, but where I'm at now is I just want to like, make people laugh, make people like um feel comfortable, and yeah, I'm not really looking to like toe that line of like cancelable territory.
Yeah. Okay. Makes sense. Going back to Chicago, I saw that you toured with Second City for a while, and you were with
Mm-hmm.
the Improv Olympics for a while too. Which would you say
Mm-hmm.
is better? Which do you like better?
Um, yeah, that's a good question. Because they're very different. I mean, I did a lot more at IO because I was on a Herald team there for 2 years, and I worked there before I was a performer as well. So IO, when I was in Chicago, was sort of my home base. That was where I met a lot of my closest friends, and that was where I got to just get up on stage a lot, and it was super fun. So I think that IO has a special place in my heart. Uh, but Second City, to their credit, they actually pay people to do sketch comedy, which is great.
Yeah.
And with through Second City, I got to go do gigs. Like I went to Kansas City for a week last year and got to perform to like huge sold out crowds every night for a whole week. And that was and get paid the whole time. And
Yeah.
so that was a really fun experience, and something that is so great about Second City because they have such a solid brand, and once you're in their system, you get to get great performance opportunities because of that. Um, but yeah, I mean, I haven't been in Chicago in a few years. I know that IO is back and it's very different now. I have some friends who are there, and I think that they're still doing great stuff. But I would say that back in the day when I was in Chicago, IO was definitely my home base, my true place that I felt comfortable at.
Yeah. While you were touring with Second City, did you have any special performances or places that you have a fond memory of?
Yeah, I mean, I think, like I said, the Kansas City one was probably the best, specifically because it was February of 2023. We arrived the day after the Chiefs won the Super Bowl. So the whole city was like lit up.
Yeah.
It was everybody was so hyped, and we were in the Starlight Theater, which is a beautiful space. And they had these riser seats. I think they sat maybe like anywhere from like 2 to 300 people. But we had these pack shows, and it was a show all about Kansas City. So like we were just doing all these like local references. Everybody was loving it. And then whenever we had like a little dip in energy, all we had to do was turn to the audience and say, "And the Chiefs won the Super Bowl!" And the audience would just go nuts. Like they would just go, "Yeah!" Every single time. And so yeah, that was a really really fun show because we got to do it so many times, and the whole city, everybody was just so happy. The whole city felt like it was a big parade, the
Yeah.
whole week. So it was fun.
Yeah, I definitely had like a similar experience because I don't usually dabble in performance that much, but I was at like a show that our high school had hosted, and basically I was a host for this talent show, so we would have like a sort of funny skit in the beginning, and we it was I live in Michigan, Ann Arbor, so
Oh,
and it
nice,
was
nice.
happening February 2024, so right after they had won like the national
Hmm.
championship. So we were like, okay, we have like I know it's kind of like a old news, but we have to address this, and I feel like it was one of the biggest reactions when we set up when we like made it a reference to
Yeah,
Michigan winning. So it
no,
was like really funny to me.
exactly. And that's what's so cool. Like, I feel like I did learn that through Second City touring too, is like when you travel to places, and when people come out to these shows, like having localized references and localized humor is so I think important, and it's because it's something that makes the audience feel like you know them and like you're paying attention to what's important to them. And so yeah, it's like if you're in Ann Arbor, the championship just happened. I mean, it just makes sense to like mention it because I think that if you're sitting in that audience, it makes you feel oh they're being funny and they understand something that's like important to me, something that's a big deal to me. So yeah, I totally agree with that. And also, I want to say too, I've been to Ann Arbor. I think back in fall of 2019 with IO, we went to University of Michigan and we did a few shows and a few workshops with OMCO, I think is what they were called. It's an improv team at the university,
Oh, I
and
think they had a
we
summer
did a
camp
couple shows with
recently.
them. Yeah, and I
Yeah.
have a few friends who were on. I think their other team is called Midnight Book Club or something like that. But I know there are a couple of great improv teams at U of M, and Ann Arbor is a really cool town. I remember that graffiti alley
Oh
and
yeah.
walking around downtown. It's a cool place.
Downtown is actually really nice. I've been there. I don't go there much often, but it's really nice.
Yeah.
I saw that you often go to stilts when you're in your
Mhm.
performance. How did that come to be?
Yeah, yeah, that's a great question too. Sort of a weird roundabout thing, I guess, but I think I mentioned before that when I was a kid, I did this like theater academy in my hometown. And there was the man who founded that academy. His name was Ron Anderson. He was a big fan of still walking, and he taught a class that I attended when I was 14. That was where he helped you build your own set of stilts and then taught you how to walk on them. And it was just a thing where like I was in eighth grade. It seemed like all of my theater friends at the time were learning how to walk on stilts, so I was like, I guess I'll do it too. And so Ron helped me build a pair of stilts, and then he taught me how to walk on them, and that was something I would do a lot, like with the theater that in my hometown throughout high school. And then when I was in Chicago, fast forward like to the end of college, I started hosting a variety show. It was a show called Thunderdome that was originally started by Carmen Christopher, and back in the day, and then he passed it on to Nate Barone, passed it on to my friend Megan Sullivan, and then passed it on to me. So it was sort of like an institutional variety show in Chicago. And when I assumed the hosting responsibilities, I wanted to give myself just something memorable, something to stick out and make the show seem a bit different than your average run of the mill variety show. So I had a thought to ship my stilts from my hometown in Georgia up to Chicago. And then I started hosting that show on stilts as the tallest man in Chicago, is what I called myself. And I started like sort of get a bit of reputation around town as like, oh yeah, you're that guy who stands on stilts for no reason. But it was fun because people started coming to the show because they were just like, what the heck is up with this show? Why is this guy walking on stilts? And so that was sort of where it started, I guess, where I started merging the stilt walking with doing comedy. And then when I moved to LA, I started my own variety show called Tall Boys Club, where I also hosted on stilts as the tallest man in LA. And then yeah, more recently I've been trying to incorporate the stilts into like some of the videos that I make for social media. I also worked with some friends last year to make a short film where I'm playing this my sort of tallest man in LA character as well. So that's going to be coming out within a couple of months.
Oh, that's
Um,
nice.
but yeah, So like that's sort of where it sort of happened in a weird roundabout way, but now I'm here I am and I'm kind of the stilts guy, I guess. But it's been really fun because I don't see too many other people combining stilts and comedy stuff, and I want to change that. So
Yeah. I've like yeah, I don't think I've seen anyone else use stilts before. And I was
hmm
very shocked. I actually was like I was looking at your like old like videos and you made a claim that you were too tall to get COVID.
that's right.
Did you in
Yeah,
fact get COVID?
I definitely did get COVID. Yeah, that was not accurate scientifically. Um, but I wasn't wearing the stilts when I got COVID, so who
Oh,
knows? Maybe if I had been wearing the stilts, it would have been different.
you should just worn the stilts like 24/7. Then you wouldn't have gotten it.
Exactly. Stilts and a mask, right? All
Yeah,
the
yeah.
time.
Did you take the vaccine just to precaution?
Oh yeah, definitely. Back in what 2021, I think. Yeah, and then I finally got COVID in 2022 when my buddy and I went on a trip to Mexico. And Mexico City was where it finally caught me.
Yeah. So from these stilts to like other like sketches you have on like social media, how do you like think of these ideas, would you say?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it comes from like a lot of different places. I think a big part of it is just sort of like observing things both online and also in real life, and again finding things that I think are funny. I do think, as with the things on stage, when you're making things online as well, I think that's the number one thing is like, do I think this is funny too? And so, I think something that's really a great formula for at least like getting some ideas out is just seeing what people are doing online and seeing if you can't make a parody of like some kind of popular trend. I think that making a parody of something like, if there's a particular trend where, I guess for like one thing that comes to mind is those videos that are like, two people walking down and they're like, we're we're Michiganders. Yeah, we're gonna tell you where we are on the mid.
Yeah,
You know
yeah,
what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah.
And it's like, and then the going back and forth thing. And so sometimes there are these natural like trends or templates that pop up on social media that become so popular that then it becomes easy to mimic them. Um, so I think that's one way that I find a lot of inspiration. Um, and then yeah, another thing is just I guess like doing bits with my friends, honestly doing improv. I feel like oftentimes when I'm doing improv on stage with my friends in an improv show, that's where we're just, riffing around, we're coming up with things off the fly. And then every now and then there'll be something that hits and it sticks in my mind. And after the show, I'll be thinking, you know what? That actually was a really funny character idea. Maybe I should go home and, write out a little idea and see if I can't turn that into something. Um, because that was something actually that happened with a video I made with some buddies a few months ago where we were a barbershop quartet
Who
who
only sing
only
Imagine
does Imagine
Dragons?
Dragons.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was basically born out of an improv show I had done a few months prior where I ended up being in a barbershop quartet and we said that we only did Imagine Dragons songs, and I was thinking that could be fun to see
It
if
was a
there's
very
some kind of
random
like
it was a
way to
very
make it.
random thing, I would say.
Yeah, yeah, but it was fun because it resonated with a lot of people. A lot of people said, this is great. Some people said this is my hell on earth. And somewhere, you know what I mean? Whether that's good or bad, I mean, hey, if it makes you think, that's all we can hope for.
I mean, it worked on TikTok, so it got to be funny. So
Yeah, so I was happy with that, and it was fun to make that idea with some very talented and fun friends as well. So.
yeah. I saw another bit you had with one of your friends where like I think it was the wife that's like invisible and like
hmm
no one can see it except for like the camera person. How did that
Yeah,
come to
yeah.
be?
Yeah, so that's my friend Elizabeth Andrews, who is so so funny. We met doing improv in Chicago together, but she now lives in LA as well. And she actually posted a video a few months ago that was just her. I think it was our friend Aaron walking up to her and saying like, "Excuse me, ma'am, can you tell me where the closest coffee shop is?" And Elizabeth did the "You can see me," kind
Yeah.
of thing. And I thought it was so funny that I kind of the next I saw Elizabeth later that day, and I said that was so funny. I haven't stopped laughing and thinking about it, and I just kind of was like, if you ever want to do another one of those and collaborate and make one together, like let me know. And so we kind of like brainstormed some ideas, and then we came up with a couple that we really liked, and got our friend to like help us out with being the camera guy. And yeah, just kind of built on this joke that Elizabeth came up with. It was really me just being like, "Hey, Elizabeth, I love that. Like, please let me be a part of it."
Yeah.
um, and so yeah, it's been really fun to make those.
Yeah. So would you say a lot of comedy is just building on like a single idea and just like honing it to be more funny and like getting more ideas from this single thing?
Yeah, I mean, I think especially when it comes to like like online stuff too. I think a lot of it is like trying to find. I think people use different words like finding your comedic voice or your brand. But I think that yeah, like kind of finding your one singular idea or topic that that is important to you and feels authentic to you, and then building off of that. And seeing how far you can go. You know, like when something resonates with people, it's like okay, they like this. Let's give them some more. It kind of ties back to what I was talking about too, with like being on stage in an improv scene, and when the audience laughs. I feel like that translates to online when when videos do well. It's like okay, cool. Well, clearly, people like this idea. There's something there. So like, let's see if we can't give them a little bit more of this. And but I think the key is also like making sure that you're being authentic with it. That you're not just talking just to say stuff, because I think that there's a lot of comedy, both live and recorded, out there that can sometimes feel like people are just trying to eke out some likes and some views, and it's just like kind of trying to put out stuff that isn't like super well thought out, but just to like put it out for the practice of putting it out there. And I don't think there's anything like inherently wrong with that, but I think that it's always going to be more satisfying and more fruitful when you really care about what you are putting out there and when you think it's funny first.
I would definitely agree with that. And I feel like I feel like it's worse when live, but even online, if there's a I feel like there's a culture of like heckling. But I feel like online is
Right.
even like ruder, but it's not as bad as hearing it in person.
Yeah.
Um, I just want to ask, what is probably the worst heckles you've gotten live?
That's a good question. I mean, honestly, I feel like I'm pretty lucky still, like compared to, people who I know and people who are out there who have received like pretty savage comments, or like even like, pretty savage live heckles. Um, I can't even think of like a specific one. I mean, okay, maybe one that comes to mind was a few months ago when my friend Jordan Lee Cohen and we made a video that was about saying goodbye in LA, and it got shared on Time Out LA's like main account, and we had a bunch of people who were roasting us in the comments, saying, "Oh, these guys are obviously transplants. They're not from LA. No one in LA does this." But then there was one comment that was like something like, "These two are obviously not from here because they have weights above the target, like weight above the target weight." And I was like, "Ooh, okay, all right, cool." Um, heard this is what it's like to put yourself out there online.
Yeah,
Sometimes people are just like, yeah, take a shot at either the content or like even your appearance or whatever. But I think you just got to take it all and with a grain of salt, and realize like that when you put yourself out there for the world to see, that's sometimes people are going to give you some of that back. But just don't pay too much attention to it. Move on, create the next video, and realize that it doesn't really matter. They've probably moved on in their head already too. So
yeah, they're probably not thinking, oh, I remember that one guy I saw online in one of those reels that I really did not
yeah,
like.
yeah, 100%.
Who did you have any inspirations of like why you wanted to enter this field, you would say?
Yeah, I mean, I think that Well, one inspiration for me was definitely my first improv teacher, whose name is Adam Archer. He lives in LA now, and I, again, I have the privilege to like call him a friend now and perform with him. But back in the day, when he was just out of college, he was my high school and middle school improv teacher, and he definitely was a person who I really looked up to. I always thought he was the funniest person in the room, and that really inspired me, and I wanted to, follow in his footsteps, which is why I basically followed him to Chicago. Um, but then I guess another thing too was like around the high school age was when I really got into. I mean, when I feel like when I was in high school was when NBC Thursdays were a big thing. So you had, The Office and Parks and Rec and 30 Rock and Community. It was sort of like this, in my mind, like golden age of comedy on TV that was happening. It was all coming out all the time, and I was really obsessed with all of it. And so, like, everybody who was in the office, the masters of like Steve Carell and Rainn Wilson, and then looking at 30 Rock with Tina Fey and Parks and Rec with Amy Poehler, I was super inspired by all of them. And then it just took me a little bit of time online to realize, oh wait, Steve Carell, Amy Poehler, Tina Fey, they all went through Second City. They all went through Chicago. And so once I put those strings together, it was like my North Star was just, oh, obviously this is where I'm going to go. I
Yeah,
don't even need to see it first. They all went there first. Okay, that's where I'm going.
it's the starting
Um,
point.
exactly. Yeah, yeah.
Have you watched Despicable Me 4 yet?
Not yet. I have a lot of catching up to do with the Despicable Me franchise, so I don't want to jump into four without seeing three. But I'm sure that Steve kills it.
Steve does kill it, I would say. If you had a chance to go back to Chicago and, let's just say, perform on the main stage of Second City, would you take it?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, I still have friends who are back and they're on main stage now, and I have friends who are like a part of the touring company now. And I mean, Second City is uh, it's a great gig. I feel like there's not many other situations in the country, maybe even the world, where you get paid to do sketch comedy consistently. And the main stage is a really, really unique job. You do have to give, and to get that, you have to give Second City a lot of your time. You have to give them a lot. You have to be really dedicated and be in the building for a long time. And so I think for me and some of my friends who moved out here when we did, it was a little bit of deciding, okay, well, do I want to give all of this time, all of this, effort to one place, or do I want to try to just move and see if I can experience some new things, meet some new people, try out different things? And so I don't regret leaving Chicago, but if I had the ability to wake up tomorrow and do main stage, I would totally do it.
Yeah, because I was interviewing one of the people on main stage now, Andy Bolduck.
Yeah, Andy's great. Yeah, he's
Yeah,
he's a good buddy of mine.
yeah, he was talking about how like he originally started like just doing from like IO and then touring company and then main stage and like all that stuff. So
No, yeah, and Andy was one of those guys who was killing it when I arrived in Chicago. I remember he was doing his, in 5 minutes the library becomes a pool
oh yeah,
bit,
that I saw
which
that
I think,
Instagram reel.
yeah, and I mean, I remember when the first time I saw him do that, I was laughing so hard I was on the floor, and yeah, just so to see him now have done a couple main stages is so cool because I mean, he's been one of my favorites for a long time.
Yeah, I also love him. Like I remember I went to Chicago one time. And I went to specifically go see Second City because I had heard almost like Stephen Colbert, Steve Carell, all these people doing Second City. So I was like, oh, it's got to be good. And I saw him perform. And I was like, he's my favorite up there. So
Oh, yeah. He's hilarious.
um, what would you say currently your dream gig would be?
Um, yeah, I think honestly, I really look to like the careers of people like honestly, I mean, I'm sure that you're aware of or maybe also a fan of Tim Robinson and Sam Richardson, some amazing Detroit, Michigan guys who also went the Second City path. And Um, what they're able to do right now with I think you should leave, and there are other acting projects. Detroiters, which is a great show. I mean, I think like the career that they have is something I really aspire to. Something where you have the ability to work with your friends, to write and perform, and so you're writing stuff that is funny to you, and then you're getting to perform that stuff as well. I mean, that's I feel like the dream. Um, and yeah, I feel like in an ideal world, I would love to be able to just create like a show with my friends and get to flex all of our talents and just have fun with each other. I think that's the ultimate goal.
Yeah, that certainly sounds like a fun thing to do. Just be with your friends the entire time and just like goof off and have fun.
Yeah, yeah, like somehow making it so that you get paid to have fun with your friends is like always the dream. Like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, how do I make that happen?
This is a question that I personally need like relate, but when you decided that you wanted to go into this career, how was your parents' reaction to it?
Yeah, yeah, that's, I mean, that is huge because I feel like you can get such a varied, um, you know, amount of responses. I feel very, very lucky. I mean, thankfully, my parents are both very creative people. They both were theater majors in college, and so they sort of met through doing theater back in like the 80s. And my mom actually then went on to be a high school theater teacher, and in fact, my own high school theater teacher. Um, so I was very predisposed to being in theater and in the arts when I was growing up. And it was definitely never something where they put pressure on me to do it, but they were like, well, let's put him and also my little siblings in theater and see if they like it. And I definitely really took to it. Um, and so when I told them that I wanted to pursue it in college as well, I think that they were not super surprised because I was really obsessed with it, and
Yeah.
that I was pretty much not talk about anything else. And also, I made sure to take care of my studies first. I was in when I was in school. I mean, I was a pretty diligent student, making sure I always had like good grades and making sure that my academics were taken care of before I, you know, went into doing extracurricular theater stuff. Um, so I think that was another thing where like they trusted me to be like, okay, he's making the right choice for himself. And I think my mom and my dad also know that like with a theater degree or an arts degree, there's a link. I think there's a big stereotype that like getting these kinds of degrees is that it's like a waste of money or that it's useless. But like there's actually a lot of skills that really translate to get it from like getting a degree in theater or writing or like any of these kind of like creative degrees that really translate to the working world as well. I mean, I've been working at a tech company for 6 years now, and pretty consistently have worked in tech since getting out of college. And that's all just kind of based on the fact that with my degree, I was able to hone my like personal skills, my collaboration skills, my interviewing skills, and so it's helped me to get and maintain jobs. And so yeah, I think that my parents just had that. They already knew that it wasn't going to be a situation where they had to be worried about me being a starving artist, so to speak. And so I think that thankfully they responded and reacted really well to it. They even were surprisingly cool with me moving to Chicago again, despite the fact that I had never been there. But I think like they were ultimately super supportive, which I feel very grateful for because I know that not everybody has the same situation, and parents, they influence your life so much, and you want to do everything that you can to honor them and respect them and all the sacrifices they've made for you. But at the same time, sometimes we have these urges and these like passions in us that we can't deny, and so it can be a tough thing. But yeah, I mean, how does that relate to you as well?
Basically, so since I'm a senior in college, I'm not college, high school. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I need to start picking like what majors I want to, like what colleges I want to apply to, and I just recently, like a year or two ago, um really got into like comedy and performing, but I haven't really dove much into it because I've always my entire life I've had like a set direction, general direction I was wanting to go in. Like I intend to go into pre-med and I still too, but I could just do a little plan B of comedy, just do that on the side.
Mhm.
But I don't think my parents are that receptive to having this side. So I was just seeing if like how other people were when they I guess told their parents about it, how they reacted to it.
Totally. And I think also, I mean, for what it's worth, I think that a lot of the people that I met in Chicago, especially at IO, doing improv, were a lot of them were people who moved to Chicago after college, and usually after getting a degree in something that wasn't comedy related at all, or even performance related. I mean, I think that the cool thing about comedy and especially improv, it's that I do think that it's something that can really fit into your life however it has to. And so I remember when I was taking classes at IO, there were people in my classes who were pre-med students, who were like law students and bankers and teachers, substitute teachers, like the people from all walks of life who were just, kind of decided, hey, I want to, take a class and see if I can maybe get some public speaking skills, or like the people who were really into it followed it all the way through and started doing improv where it was like, hey, yeah, I'll do my job during the day and then do improv at night. And so I would say that there's, I mean, I feel like personally I made a pretty intentional and bold dive into it where I decided I'm moving to Chicago to do this in college and really narrowed my concentration. But that's just one way. Everybody has different paths, and like whatever you just choose to do in college and wherever you choose to go, that I think that you can still fit comedy in whatever regard it's possible.
Okay. When you were picking your college, did you look at like the different comedy scenes in each city or like different cities?
Mean, I feel like I was pretty narrow-minded on Chicago, honestly. Like I said, I think between my teacher Adam and when I learned about Second City and how all of the people I admired at the time had gone through there, I pretty much knew that that was the place I wanted to be. And so I just looked mostly at Chicago schools. I looked at Northwestern, I looked at DePaul, um, and then the cool thing that really got me for Columbia was that it was actually going to be the first year of their BA program, which was BA in comedy writing and performance. And it's a degree track that they do in conjunction with Second City. And so from there, I was like, wow, this feels super special, super cool because it's brand new. And part of the deal is that your professors at school also are teachers at Second City. So I got to take a ton of like improv and sketch classes when I was just like a freshman and sophomore in college. And so yeah, I was. That's sort of what made me pick it because I was like, hey, this is a brand new program. Seems like it's full of potential, and seems like it'll be full of other comedy nerds from around the country like me. And it definitely was. And I met a ton of great other uh, people who I'm still close with who are also obsessed with writing and performing comedy. Um, and yeah, so like that's I guess that's how I ended up at Columbia specifically in Chicago.
Okay. When you were making this decision to go into this career, did you ever like have a massive like fear of failing during this?
Um, I don't know. I mean, I think that like I've always just had this like idea that I'll keep doing it until it's not fun anymore. So I think that's maybe what I'm more like attuned to, or maybe like more concerned with, is like doing it beyond the point of enjoying it. Um, because um, I think that like failure is so subjective. Failure and success is so subjective. It's like, I mean, if your goal is to be the most famous comedian in the world, then your odds of failure are pretty high because it's a
Yeah.
pretty, it's a pretty like lofty goal.
Yeah.
But if your goal is to make stuff that makes you laugh, do it with people who you love, and just like constantly be doing it in ways that you enjoy it, then your goal is much more attainable. And so I feel like that's sort of where I'm at. And if I was failing at that goal, meaning that like, I'm not having fun and I'm not enjoying it and I want to, and then at that point, I would just tell myself to move on and probably try a different focus. But at this point, I'm, uh, I guess 10, 11 years out of high school. So 10 or 11 years of just like fully going down the like comedy writing and performing path, and I don't see an end in sight. I mean, it's still a path that has been super exciting for me, and one that like gives me a real sense of purpose and a real sense of feeling um like I know what I'm doing with my life, and like I know that there's something that I feel like I'm good at and something that I feel like I'm always getting better at. And yeah, I don't know. It's a path that so far I have never looked back from.
It's like when other people say like they go to golf on weekends. Instead, you go to comedy.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. Go to the theater. Yeah, just like last night, my wife was in an improv show, and then the night before that, I was in one. So it's like, that's the thing. It's just like doing the shows at night, and then during the day, taking the time when I can, when I'm home, to write, make a video with a friend, or submit a self tape audition. I feel like that's sort of the phase of doing comedy in LA that I'm at right now.
When you compare Chicago and LA, which comedy scene do you prefer?
Um, yeah, I mean, it's hard because like LA, they are very different because the LA has the industry here.
Mm-hmm.
Chicago doesn't really have as much of an industry presence. And so in that regard, I think I have a soft spot for the Chicago scene just because it's a lot of people doing it for the love of the game. And I think that's beautiful. Like there's a lot of people who do some of the best improv that you can see in the world in Chicago every night. And they're not doing it because they want to be famous. They're not doing it because they want, a TV show or a movie deal. It's because they are just obsessed with improv. And and I think in LA it's a bit of a different flavor. There's a bit of people are a bit more have their eyes set on the industry and sort of the idea of like, well, I can do these shows because I want to eventually achieve that dream goal of having the TV show, making the movie, whatever it is. And so it makes the scene very different because it feels like everything out here feels like a bit more of an audition versus like in Chicago, it feels like everything is a bit more of an experiment. Um, so yeah, I mean, I definitely, like I said, I have a soft spot for the Chicago scene because that was where I got to be young and I got to fail all the time. I got to just like, fall flat on my face and then get back up and say, okay, let me try something different next time. Um, but LA is also, it's a different beast to figure out. I'm still figuring it out. I feel like friends I have who have been here for years are still figuring it out. So, um, yeah, it's exciting because it's kind of like a puzzle. And so
Yeah,
that the part of my brain that wants to like figure things out is liking the LA scene right now.
that's nice. Uh, Even though you've only been in LA for probably a few years, I'm sure that you're probably more familiar with it than me, who was like, I've only been there once just to see like the grand sights. If I were to visit LA again, what would you say are the places I must go to?
Oh yeah, great question. I mean, UCB is definitely the pinnacle when it comes to like good improv in LA. All the shows are always sold out. And if you can't get into UCB on a Thursday night, I happen to have a show that's every Thursday night that my buddy Trent and I produce. It's called Mandatory Improv Show, and it's every Thursday at the Yard Theater. So that's a fun one because we typically book a lot of people like us who were in Chicago and then moved to LA. So it's sort of a different style than the improv that you'll see at UCB, which is more of like a pure LA style. And then versus like at my show, it's more like Chicago style, which is fun. Yes, but also I feel like I'm always seeing great stuff at the Elysian Theater. The Elysian is a cool spot because it's sort of become the home base for like the clowning scene in LA.
Yeah.
There's lots of really cool clown shows that are sort of popping up, and you can see people do lots of really cool experimental things there. Um, but yeah, I feel like those would be my main recommendations on like places to check out. Um, and also, I think the Comedy Store is obviously like the iconic place that you have to go to when you're in LA because you never know who's going to be there, who's going to drop in. That's where you can see, maybe John Mulaney just drop in on a random Tuesday night, and so that's I think the magic of Hollywood. So yeah, I would say those three places you see between UCB Elysian and Comedy Store. Um, yeah,
All right. I make sure next time if I go visit my sister over there, I will come look. All right.
yeah, yeah.
And last question. What advice would you give to people who want to start out in this like a career in this place?
Yeah. I mean, I at, at the risk of talking too much about improv, I really do think that no matter what your comedic focus is, whether it's to do solo stuff, whether it's stand up, whether it's writing, I really do think that everybody can benefit from having an improv background and from having it's especially when you're starting out, there's just so many great lessons that you can learn in when you're taking a good improv class when it comes to being a good team player, how to be collaborative, how to listen, how to uplift other people. And I think there are a lot of people who can go into the field and they have a bit more of a maybe like a selfish mindset where they're sort of like I just want to be funny. I want to be the funniest one in the room. I want to be the best. And I think that a lot of the people who start the improv route first and then transition into doing other stuff, they tend to have more of a humble mindset and more of a mindset of like lifting up your scene partner, lifting up other people, and I think it helps to just focus more on being kind and being fun and a good person to work with than it does necessarily to be the best and the most talented. So yeah, that would be my number one advice is starting out, find a good place in your area where you can take an improv workshop, an improv class, just get your feet wet with that. And then I think you're going to be a better performer, a better writer, a better person after that class.
All right. If I do go to college in Chicago, I'll make sure to take some improv classes nearby and see.
Yes, yeah, they got the best ones there.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for talking with me. For taking this hour
Yeah,
away. If I do go to
yeah,
LA, I'll make sure to drop by and see one of your shows. All right. I hope you have a great
of
day.
course.
Continue doing your
Yeah,
tech
thanks.
job
You too.
and have a good comedy
Yeah.
night if you have one.
Yep, appreciate it.
All right.
Yeah, I'll talk to you later.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you guys so much for listening to this episode. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. I definitely had enjoyed this conversation with Alan. He's a very friendly little guy, and I hope I can see you next time. Thank you.